Chapter 1. Meeting the pusty sea quietly lapped at James's feet. The sand crunched under his sandals, leaving a distinct trail on the damp shoreline. The past is unchangeable, but it must not repeat, he muttered, as if convincing himself of the thought. His gaze lingered on a sailing yacht moored to Athena Island by a bright orange rope. A woman appeared from behind the stern, illuminated by the setting sun. Her silhouette stood out sharply against the crimson sky, but her face remained in shadow. James tensed. His hand slowly reached for the gun in his jacket pocket. "Don't," came a woman's voice before he could raise the weapon. The shot rang out. The bullet whizzed past his head, shattering a champagne bottle on the table. Wine spilled out, leaving a crimson streak resembling blood. "James, aren't you happy to see me?" the woman said with a smile, raising a glass of wine. In her other hand, she still held the pistol. James brushed the bottle's shards off his jacket, donned dark sunglasses, and finally recognized her. "Natalia Podolskaya," he whispered, as if the name escaped him involuntarily. "Oh, James, don't be shy. As if we're not family," Natalia laughed. "What will our son, Volodya, think of us, Volodya?" James froze, as if time itself had stopped. "Yes, Vol," she began but didn't finish. A shot into the air forced James to instinctively retreat. Her laughter was just as he remembered from 40 years ago in a Moscow park. Memories overwhelmed him, pulling him away from reality. Summer, youth, a time when everything seemed possible, but life left no room for sentimentality. Snapping back to the present, James sharply dodged to their side, and drawing his gun, fired. Chapter 2. The beginning of a new part. 20 years ago, James officially retired. At his farewell party, his colleagues gifted him a small sailboat, a modest gesture of gratitude for his many years of service. Yet James knew that retirement in his line of work was merely a transition from one office to another. That day, he realized how much the world had changed. Instead of complex field operations, intelligence now relied on algorithms, drones, and social networks. Even romance had given way to unconventional interests, and espionage resembled a game of virtual chess. James didn't complain. His new mission proved more challenging and convoluted than anticipated. Athena Island became his base, and the yacht his refuge, from which he observed politicians, diplomats, and agents crowding the Mediterranean. The island played host to a peculiar game. Politicians negotiated while spies and soldiers created instability. James knew something larger lurked behind it all: weapons, money, influence. Prepared for it all, James built a network of bartenders and waitstaff to keep tabs on the local political landscape. Yet his heart yearned for chases and adrenaline. When an explosion at the port signaled the start of a new chapter, James knew it was time to act. Chapter 3. The port's secret. James stood on the pier, staring at the remnants of the destroyed warehouse. The sweet smell of burning chemicals tickled his nostrils, while rusty oil slicks spread across the water. The official report claimed improper storage of hazardous materials caused the explosion. But James knew there were no coincidences in such matters. He put on his AR glasses. The virtual interface scanned the scene, highlighting fragments that might be important. A piece of metal plating with charred edges, rubber tracks suggesting recent cargo transport. "Who are you?" came a raspy voice. Turning, James saw a port official clutching a notebook. "Tom Smith, International Insurance Investigator," James replied coldly, flashing a forged ID. A gleaming Rolex adorned his wrist, and from his jacket pocket, he retrieved a cigar. "Smoke?" he offered, holding out the cigar to the official. The man coughed but couldn't refuse the polite foreigner. As the conversation drifted to the incident, the official inadvertently revealed key details. The cargo belonged to a shadowy corporation, and their transportation receipts were signed by someone close to the city's mayor. James recorded every word using the camera in his glasses. When the conversation ended, he handed the official a gold pen, a parting gift, containing a microphone and tracker. "Thank you for your cooperation," James said, walking away. Chapter 4. Playing with fire. Back on his yacht, James laid out the collected data. The picture was becoming clearer. A shadowy corporation was using the port to smuggle new weapons destined for radical groups. The mayor, once a gangster who had climbed the ranks of power, was the key to it all. But information was only the beginning. James knew dismantling such a network required more than facts. It needed a diversion. He decided to exploit the mayor's weak spot, his jealous nature. The mayor's wife, Patricia, loved seaside outings. Once, James had saved her from a flock of pesky seagulls, creating the perfect opportunity to get closer. The next day, He met her on the beach, holding her favorite ice cream. Nearby, a floppy-eared puppy frolicked. "What a charming creature," Patricia exclaimed, smiling at James. "Charming but mischievous," he replied, handing her the leash. "But it has good taste, just like you." Laughing, Patricia accepted James's invitation to spend the day on his yacht. When the mayor learned of the meeting, he flew into a rage. He gathered his men and ordered them to destroy James's yacht, putting an end to this lover. Chapter 5. Stormy plans that evening. James sat on the deck, gazing at the horizon. He knew the mayor wouldn't let this slide. Cameras installed around the area had already captured suspicious activity near the cove. "It's time to play the game," he said, checking his weapons and reinforcements. His plan was simple. Lure the mayor into a trap, expose his two eyes to the Shadow Corporation, and dismantle the smuggling network. Meanwhile, storm clouds gathered over the island. Lightning split the sky, and heavy rain began to fall. James' mild nature was on his side. Chapter 6. The storm breaks thunder roared across the island as James fastened his rain-soaked jacket and prepared the yacht for departure. The storm was fierce, but that was the point. The chaos of the weather would mask the chaos of his plan. He activated his air glasses, which displayed the positions of the mayor's men scattered across the cove. Most had taken shelter from the rain under the crumbling stone arches, but a few lingered near the water's edge, their weapons barely concealed. James reached into a hidden compartment aboard the yacht, pulling out a waterproof case. Inside were small, state-of-the-art drones equipped with cameras and tranquilizer darts. He released them into the stormy air. "Let's see how royal these men really are," he muttered. As the drones zipped through the rain, James used his glasses to tap into their live feeds. One by one, the men fell unconscious, their radios crackling with confusion as they failed to respond to orders. Satisfied, James turned his attention to the mayor, who had arrived at the cove in an armored black SUV. Two of his most trusted bodyguards flanked him. "Time for the final act," James whispered, starting the yacht's engines. Chapter 7. The trap springs the yacht's floodlights cut through the storm as it drifted toward the cove. The mayor squinted, his hand shielding his face from the pelting rain. "Who does this fool think he is?" he growled, signaling his men to advance. As the bodyguards approached, James appeared on the deck, holding a megaphone. "Mayor," he shouted, his voice amplified over the crashing waves. "I have all the evidence I need to bring you down. Your smuggling operation, your two eyes to the Shadow Corporation, it's all recorded." The mayor laughed, though his eyes betrayed his unease. "Do you think you can intimidate me?" "You're alone, old man," James smirked. "Am I?" At that moment, the yacht's side panels slid open, revealing hidden compartments filled with speakers. A booming voice echoed across the cove. "This is Interpol. Mayor Giovanni Ricci. You are under investigation for international arms smuggling and corruption. Surrender now." Panic spread among the mayor's remaining men as James's drones, equipped with sirens and flashing lights, circled above. The ruse worked. Half of them dropped their weapons and fled into the storm. The mayor, however, wasn't so easily cowed. He drew a pistol, aiming directly at James. Chapter 8. A reckoning. James stood behind the yacht's railing as the mayor's shot rang out. The bullet ricocheted off the metal, narrowly missing him. "You think you're clever, don't you?" the mayor bellowed, advancing toward the yacht. James reached into his jacket and retrieved a flash grenade. "Clever enough," he muttered, tossing it onto the pier. The grenade detonated with a blinding flash of light, disorienting the mayor and his bodyguards. Taking advantage of the chaos, James leaped onto the pier, tackling the mayor to the ground. "You've caused enough damage," James growled, wrenching the gun from the mayor's hand. But before he could cuff him, the mayor's bodyguards recovered, aiming their rifles at James. A sudden spotlight illuminated the scene, and a voice boomed from above. "This is the Coast Guard. Drop your weapons and surrender immediately." James glanced up to see a helicopter hovering overhead, its crew armed and ready. He allowed himself a small smile. His call to Interpol had worked. The bodyguards hesitated before lowering their weapons. The mayor, realizing he was out of options, slumped against the wet ground. "You'll regret this," the mayor spat. "Maybe," James replied, standing tall as the Coast Guard agents swarmed the pier. "But you won't be around to see it." Epilogue. A quiet victory. Weeks later, James sat on the deck of his yacht, the sun shining brightly above. The storm had passed, both literally and figuratively. The mayor's arrest had led to the unraveling of a vast criminal network, and James's role in the operation remained a well-guarded secret. He poured himself a glass of scotch, savoring the warmth as he gazed out at the horizon. The Mediterranean was calm, the waves gently lapping against the hull of the yacht. His phone buzzed with a message. Well done. Rest while you can. More work ahead. James smirked, deleting the message. Rest, he muttered. We'll see about that. As the sun dipped below the horizon, James set his glass down and picked up a map of the Aegean. Somewhere out there, another storm was brewing and James Bond was ready. Epilogue. In a small seaside CAF, a man in sunglasses flipped through a fresh newspaper. The headline read, City Mayor Arrested. Secret arms smuggling network dismantled. James smiled, leaving a generous tip before exiting the CAF. A new envelope with his next target lay in his pocket. The storm he left behind was just the beginning.